He is, you're frozen. His connection is very bad up in that end of the state. He was telling me yesterday. So if he freezes, that means he's stuck in hell between, cellular and non-cellular.
Parallel universe.
Yes, I will. But I'll freeze my video to.
Okay.
I'll freeze my video. Sometimes that improves at least.
Yeah.
I can either talk or be seen. So.
All righty. So we're on Facebook Live. I see you. I see all 9 squares. So.
Okay.
Excellent.
Nice.
So on Facebook Live and the Zoom recording is going.
Yeah, great. I see the live on Facebook up there now. And we can maybe warm up a little bit and see, just get some things out of the way and see if Bernita is going to, there she is. Let's let her join us.
Hello.
Hello, Bernita.
Hello.
I can hear you. We can't see you.
Okay, hold on. Let me find my camera thing. Where is it?
We've all become technology experts at this time.
Yeah, I know.
It's usually right at the bottom here. Hold on, I got too much going on
And
here.
of course, expert is a relative term, right?
I say expert is knowing what more now than you did yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Wonderful.
There.
Hey, Bernita, how are you?
Hey, Miss Valerie, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good. Is a check in the mail for me? She knows I don't. She knows that she's special because this is not my favorite thing to do.
Well, thank you. But I did put the check in the mail.
Wow. The pandemic has pulled a lot of us out of our, this is not my usual venue. And I told Valerie, you can be in charge of all the sessions, but then we agreed, well, I'm going to host this one and another one, but some of us are not in our most comfortable place.
If there's a check in the mail somewhere, Nancy, you and I need to talk, I think.
Got the short end of the stick there.
Right. No, look what you started, Bernita.
I know, right? Well, I'm really happy to see you. Nancy and I have a secret. I don't know. I may let her tell you.
No, my lips are sealed.
Okay, good.
This is being recorded, right?
It's recorded. It's on Facebook.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and since we have everyone here, I think we'll just go ahead and get started without further delay. And what I'm just asking, I think we're all fine here. The other participants these are the panelists that are going to be talking today, and those who are video capable and want to come on later during the Q&A, you're welcome to come on and we can talk as a group. But for right now, just under these Zoom the way it's set up in a meeting, we're going to keep just the panelists here with us. And my name is Nancy Hess with NJ Hess Associates, and Valerie Leonard of Nonprofit Utopia is my partner. She's here. And we have put this virtual event together, which is 4 sessions over 2 different days, really around the topic of conversation during this COVID time and a vision for particularly communities and small businesses and socially disadvantaged enterprises, which we know are the important floor to our communities. And we really are not going to thrive and reset as communities until we can really figure out a way to all work together to get everyone through this period. So the idea from this came from some conversations that Valerie and I had through our business network, and we just decided to combine resources and see what happens. We both know some really smart, ingenious people, and we wanted to see what would happen if we cross-pollinated a little bit from our states. And one of the ideas that I do want to say, which I've shared with everyone, is that the idea of a conversation model is something I believe so strongly in, that when we ask the question, where can we begin to build our communities back up, my one word answer is conversation. So this model, this idea is that the 4 different conversations that are a part of this virtual event may also be 4 conversations that you can start in your community. So in that sense, I think of it as a conversation model. And we hope that the issues that we are talking about and the resources that we will share with you, and I might let Valerie mention that because she is really putting together a lot of the resources, but there is resources to go with these sessions that you can take back and share and so on and so forth. Valerie, you want to say a word about that? You're muted. Unmute yourself. Yeah. Where can people find resources?
Okay, yeah, I am so sorry. As you were talking, I was, going to grab the resources. I was going to upload them into the chat room. So we've got 2 folders for folks. The first folder is a folder that has resources for all of our, I want to call them workshops, all of our conversations. So you will find in there, first of all, a slide deck from the conversations, from all 4 of the conversations, and they basically have some guiding points that you might want to talk about, because the focus of this is to not just keep the knowledge to ourselves, but think of ways that we can get conversations started in other communities. So we've got a slide deck that will talk about that. We've got speaker bios, and we also, we also have another folder. We also have resources for organizations that might be going through, during this COVID-19. And then in the other folder, we have a downloadable that you can work with today. In fact, they're all downloadable, but you can use this. So as you hear different conversations, different points, you might want to take notes and think about ways that you can try this at home, so to speak. So there's a little worksheet that will have 5 or 6 questions that you can, jot down, thoughts as you hear people speak, thoughts that might help you think of ways that you can use this information at home. All righty, and in a minute, I will post those links. I have to go to the box folder and upload them. All right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
You're welcome.
And I'm going to just say a few words. There is a speaker bio, which you can access to learn more about everyone, but just to help sort of set the stage for how we all kind of came together. We have a sort of a blend of folks here for this session, which is on capacity building community style. It's really thinking about not just building capacity as an individual organization, but now how we can actually help across the community through the collaborative networks. And we have today Julie Fitzpatrick, who is executive came together. We have a sort of a blend of folks here. Now what's happening? Can you guys hear that?
Yep, it's all good.
Okay. All right. I'm going to keep going. Julie is executive director at the Pennsylvania Downtown Center. And she is really focused on providing technical assistance to local communities on a wide range of economic and planning services, and providing staff support on program development. So it's very exciting to hear what she has to say about what they're doing in response to COVID-19. Bernita Johnson-Gabriel, who I had the pleasure of meeting yesterday via phone. She is Executive Vice President for Neighborhoods and Strategic Initiatives for World Business Chicago. And I could listen to her talk the whole hour about the programs that they are really working on. We talked long enough for me to identify one, and she agreed that would be really exciting to kind of talk about today. But there is so much information She is responsible for leading the organization's efforts to support economic growth and job creation for Chicago's neighborhoods. So there's just some very interesting ideas that she brings to us today. We also have in a session today, John Ernst, who is borough manager in Lansdale, which is it's a Philadelphia suburb. So he's in the hot zone, and he has been, as a local government, really trying to think his way through how to respond to this. So I work with local governments as my sort of niche. So I picked someone who I knew could really deal with some challenging, complex kinds of thinking around an issue like this. John was previously an architect, and he's just been extremely instrumental in Lansdale in building partnerships in all types of infrastructure projects. So I thank him for being here. Charlie White is with us. He's an entrepreneur and also a diversity specialist with the Inclusion and Small Business Policy Division at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And he is just a go-to guy for anything you want to know if you want to do business with the state, and also just trying to navigate as a small business owner how to get your business up and running. So he has been a great advisor to me, and I'm really glad he's here to speak about these issues. And Dave Mattson is a council member in the city of Harrisburg. And thank you so much, Dave. I'm so glad you were able to join us on the last session as well. He has been on council since 2017, and he has been advocating for responsible planning for Harrisburg's future. And he's worked on a lot of issues. He works on budget and public safety and infrastructure, and is very involved with Impact Harrisburg, which is, I'm going to let you say more about that, but really on the front line of trying to get assistance out to organizations in the city, small businesses. And he talked in particular in our conversations about some of the resistance of trying to change old ways of thinking and bringing some new ideas into the way community can come together. So I'm very interested to let him share more about that. Okay, let's just get started. I'm going to give a lead question, and I'm going to allow the others to respond. In this first segment, I'm actually going to let Julie respond and John respond, and then I'm going to open it up for others to add comments or questions to this issue. My first area that I want to talk about with capacity building in a community has to do with effective partners. How do you find effective partners in the community? And there's a lot that you all identified when we talked prior, but I want to put this question out. Julie, in your work across the state, you see downtown communities that are struggling to reconnect and address needs at all levels. What are some of the collaborative practices that you see that seem to be working right now?
Okay. Well, actually, I might just answer the opposite of what's not working. And, you know, the inverse will then direct what does work. But often what we see are that entities, whether it's public, private, or nonprofit, often work in silos. And so very independently of one another and not very collaboratively. So what works is when people come together. You know, when they find that common ground, generally you need some kind of lead organization. The United Way has certainly been a huge proponent of the collective impact model, where you have more of like an umbrella entity that takes on that leadership role and really leads the conversation and leads the direction. And then what happens is you have an efficiency of effort, of time, of resources, and you're all working towards a common goal. And because you're working collaboratively, able to achieve that goal, hopefully in a much faster pace, in a much more efficient manner, and just, you know, looking toward that cooperation, because that partnership then could evolve into something even larger and bigger down the road. So I would say so often we need those bridges, we need those conduits, and in the work that we do with community revitalization organizations, a lot of times they can be that connection between the public, the private sectors.
Mm-hmm. Some of the groups that you've identified as effective partners in the communities, you want to mention just, you know, we kind of, I think we mentioned like there was Neighborhood Watch and there was a number of different
Sure.
groups.
Yeah, I mean, the work we do is actually in all communities, whether we're looking at large urban high density business districts and neighborhoods or small rural communities that don't have a lot of capacity. They may not even have a city or a borough manager, but it's volunteer based and really led by the nonprofit. So, you know, I think what's important is for the different areas of study to really cross over, that it's important that social service organizations work with planning agencies, work with economic development corporations, work with county planners and municipal officials. And so, you know, what we've seen is what can happen when hospitals and school districts and housing alliances collaborate. You know, they can find solutions together that they weren't able to find on their own.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. It's terrific. And John, this is in really a follow-up to that. We talked about your role as a manager in the borough government as being kind of a conductor or a host in the community. And I know your perspective of community is invaluable. In other words, when I've worked with you, you have a very wide view. You can see almost, you know, 360 in terms of what's happening. And I wonder if you can help others sort of understand how your role as municipal manager can be a part of the collaborative process, like some things you maybe can do or can't do.
Well, thanks, Nancy. It's just to follow up on what Julie was saying. Those partnerships are really instrumental. They really are. And one of the challenges for a municipal agency is we're only working with taxpayer dollars. I mean, we are obligated to provide certain resources and certain services for our paying public, our taxpayers. And not everybody agrees that we should be getting involved in certain initiatives to help underprivileged businesses or underprivileged groups. So we do start to take a default position that we can then provide our resources to help facilitate in these conversations. I would always rather have a seat at the table in part of a conversation than to find out about it, you know, 6 or 7 weeks into a project or 2 months into a project and have to come back and say, boy, I wish we had known about that because we've got something else that's happening over on this other side of town. And we could have connected you two together and your resources could have been leveraged in a much more effective way for the whole community instead of for a very small piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. So I always like to have a seat at the table. While I can't provide dollars per se in terms of investment dollars into an initiative, mm-hmm. I can certainly help provide resources. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I had always felt my role as a municipality was to provide the proper environment for people to come into the municipality and invest their dollars. You know, if I can set the table, so to speak, for developers and businesses to want to be in Lansdale, then that becomes an investment for all of the businesses in Lansdale because we all benefit from more foot traffic, for more residents, for those businesses that come into town. So my role as a municipal manager is to make sure that if I'm going to ask other businesses and entities to invest in my community, and I say that word invest with very specifically, not just support, but invest, then I better be prepared to invest myself in my community. So we went through branding, you know, a community branding phase. We went through a wayfinding phase. We have provided infrastructure improvements. And we want to provide the best possible environment for a business to come in and be successful. We have brought several partners to the table, whether it's other municipal entities, whether it's regional rail or regional developers, whether it's other utility agencies to come to the table and all talk about what is the larger global picture here that is affecting the region and not just 426 West Main Street type of thing. And that's where I think the municipality can be most effective in bringing everybody together.
Yeah. I'd like to open this up for comment. I know Bernita, from our discussion yesterday with the idea around this sort of portal and how to get people connected that are, if we take what you said, John, which is, and Julie, you know, where there's been good collaboration in place, is that helpful now? And how do you build on that to be more responsive? And any of you can respond. I think all of you have plenty to say on this issue, but if there is that already that seed that's planted, what do you do with it now? What is different? It's open to you.
I think for this is Charlie. Is the funding streams. I know for a lot of nonprofits here will probably be they'll dwindle down some. So as far as services are concerned, a lot of these nonprofit organizations are going to have to look and trying to partner up to try to go after particular money or particular funding because it may not be available. And so trying to figure out what services that they're bringing to the table versus their, I say competitor, but they're offering kind of the same services, just to kind of see how they can come together to gel to go after the same pot of money. Because I'm just anticipating funds like CDBG, they just won't be available at a higher clip now just because of COVID-19.
And Charlie, that's one of the other things why I think it's important to have the municipality at the tables, because you wouldn't believe some of the questions that we get on a daily basis looking for information. And if we have the ability to understand everything that's out there and be able to provide a master sheet or a master list, and we educate our own staff to answer phone and inquiries properly, then we can help direct people to the most valuable resource and asset for help in their immediate need at that point.
Right.
So I think this is a good time for me to chime in and talk a little bit about what Nancy and I discussed yesterday. And that is that at World Business Chicago, we house a portal. The name of it is Shy Biz Hub. And I see that my team is on this call. So hello, team.
Yes.
And
we can share the screen as well, if you'd like.
Okay, great. So Kendra Thomas and Jasmine Garcia are the two managers of this portal. It is a resource portal that we partnered with the city to develop. It's we just turned a year old in April, and it has not all, but about 100, a little over 160 resource providers on this portal, where small business owners, medium-sized business owners, and entrepreneurs can go to get to the resources that they need without having to Google every single thing that they're looking for. And this portal, the service providers that are on there are organizations that many are funded by the city of Chicago to provide services to small and medium-sized businesses. But what's different about this portal is that we were very careful about having them complete their profile and narrowing down what they do best. Because when you talk to not-for-profits, right, they do everything. We do it.
Yep.
We call something, we do it all, right? We do it all.
Make
and so what we
cards,
said to them is, we know you do it all. We know you're great, but come up with the 3 or 4 things that you do the best, the very best, so that when we add this information to the portal, you rise to the top in those areas for folks that are searching. And what we've also said to them is, we want you to utilize the portal so that you can find organizations that do things that you don't do, so that you can refer businesses to those organizations. So if there's something that you kind of sort of do, find the organization who does it and who does it well and refer them back and forth. So we've, like I said, we've had the system now for a little over a year. We've had over 10,000, we're probably closer to 15,000 sites or visits from business owners and from service providers looking for services. And they can search from anything from, I need to know how to write a business plan. If they put that information in, they can even narrow it to neighborhood or zip code if they want to find an organization in their community, or they can look citywide. They can look for city resources like I need a permit or I need a license. If they type that in, it takes them directly to where they should go to get that. So I think we kind of started that a year ago, and now I think this is really a good time for us to really hone in on it and make sure that it's providing information that we need. There's a specific page just for COVID-19. So there's a whole section on everything you need to know as a business owner. What are the loans? What are the grants? What are the specifications? Everything. And then we even went so far as to create a subsection for family supports, right? Because employers care about their employees. They can't pay them now. So what can I get? What can I direct my employees to that helps them get through this period? And so those are some of the things that we're doing as it relates to Shy Biz Hub. And I just would add, and Valerie would certainly back me up on that. I think in Chicago, we've been very fortunate that public-private partnerships have been, that's kind of like our in our DNA. So we do it pretty well. I think what you'll find, particularly now with COVID, is that our corporate partners have really stepped up and partnered with the city and partnered with us to get resources out to the communities that need them.
I'm going to just bring that screen up. I'm sorry, 1 second. I think you all will stay on in small, but if I can do this, I want to show you just briefly. Where did it go?
And if I could ask Bernita a question, because I came up with something similar. It would have been a subset of the city website. So you would go to the city website, but it would be an actual resource page dedicated to the things that you mentioned. I got pushback as far as the hosting, because there has to be a vessel that's going to host the web, right? And they're going to have to pay for the hosting part. So where did you get the funding for that? To pay for the hosting aspect of it, of the website, the maintenance aspect of it.
So let me just say that our website, Shy Biz Hub, is powered by a larger group called SourceLink. Okay. And SourceLink is sort of the analytics behind all of this. They are in, I don't know, where's my team? How many cities is SourceLink in now, guys? Probably 12 to 15 different cities throughout the country. And they all function, in a different way, depending on where they are. But this was a partnership from the very beginning with the city of Chicago and with World Business Chicago. And of course, we are a not-for-profit, and so we fundraise as well. So it was a combination of those funds. Okay, Jasmine, 50 affiliates across the country.
Nice.
Yeah. And I did, query you that, is this something that could be done on a smaller scale? And I do think it's worth checking out. I do believe that it can be regional. I mean, you could work with a regional planning. You could work with, in the last session, Monique talked about libraries. Think about this, John. The library gets converted into actually the host they have technical services, they have information services. They could be a place where people can go in and actually they hired social workers at the library, is what she talked about, to actually walk people through the process of using that, accessing that information. So I think SourceLink, when we may think, oh, wow, that you can do that in Chicago, but can you do that anywhere else? And I think your sense of it is you could do this at any size that you want to do it.
You absolutely can. I'm sure we're the largest city that's a host right now. But I mean, they range from Baltimore to Kansas City to Puerto Rico. There's a, I forget where. So they're, like I said, there are 50 different affiliates. The challenge would be the maintenance, right? Because you have to be in constant conversation with your service providers to make sure everything is up to date. There's a mechanism there so that if you go to search for, let's say, how to write a business plan, and it takes you to the ABC organization, we get data that says you went there.
Mm-hmm.
We can follow up to find out with that agency. Did John come to that agency? What were the services that were provided? And we can also reach back to that individual to make sure that they were served. We wish there were an easier way to do that, but right now it's really manual for us to kind of have that conversation with them. But it tells the organization how many people are looking for you, how many people found you. And the other thing that we really like about it was that we were able to uplift and promote organizations citywide who may not have otherwise been promoted, right? Or may not have been recognized for the work that they do. And so with this search vehicle, if I put it in there, whatever it is that I want, and if I leave the zip code or the neighborhood blank, those are going to rise to the top, and they could very well be organizations that I wouldn't have thought of.
Right. That's great that you all do those wraparound services, because I know people always look for that. When you come in somewhere, they don't want to just get a resource and then be turned around. They want that follow-up to know that, something actually manifested from it. So that's
Absolutely. Great. And we also have a portion on our portal where businesses can sign up so that they get our monthly newsletter, they get any e-blast. And with COVID-19, we've been just getting all kinds of information out. So we're probably well over 1,000 people who get that email or get that blast every time, in addition to all the service providers that we have.
Nice.
It's tremendous.
My team is writing something. They're telling me, what did I say, Kendra? She's saying the newsletters are sent monthly. I thought I said monthly. My bosses are on this call.
I wonder, this does represent a shift, and I know yesterday, Bernita, you said that your feeling is that people just want to know what can I do, what can I do, and I don't know, maybe the folks in Pennsylvania, maybe Dave, I know we talked a little bit. It is a shift for a lot of organizations to suddenly kind of move to and Julie can speak to this. There's some communities where people may still be a little bit resistant to going through a portal and working online. And I don't know what kind of challenge. There's an opportunity here maybe to get people to move into that, but there's also a challenge. I see Dave nodding his head. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Everybody doesn't have the same resources. I think for us, when we initially went home, Wi-Fi access, trying to get on to the internet, a proper computer, maybe be able to print the resources that you're looking at, print the documents that you're looking at, be able to fill those out. I know for us too, as far as the state, we do things with certification for small businesses. So I know notaries right now, they can't receive their licensing because the licensing portion is suspended. So we've been waiving some of the notary documents that needed to be notarized, just to kind of get around that particular process to not hold things up. So it's very difficult in several communities.
Yeah.
One of our challenges would be that, right now, at least in southeastern PA, our library isn't even open. It's not allowed to be open. And we have a certain segment of our population that goes to the library on a regular basis to use technology to do their daily business of whatever it is they need to do, fax information to the DMV or arrange doctor's appointment through a portal or something like that. So not having the availability of a library to serve the community is a challenge. So
yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is a lot of small mom and pop operations may have a skill. They may be a cook or know how to do hair, but they're not necessarily administrators. And so time is a big thing for a lot of them, is that they may not have the expertise or knowledge of how to navigate a website the way that a lot of the people on this call would know how to do it. And so it takes them just a lot of time, and they're already doing or running a business. So that's just something that I think also can be a barrier, simply the time and expertise of navigating those things.
I think one of the things that we talked about yesterday, we host webinars also, and one of the challenges that we're trying to grapple with and trying to see if we can help make a difference is that our Latino population is really struggling, our business owners from the Latino population, because they are used to that touch and that hands-on work that they do with the not-for-profits that serve them. And much of the information that comes out is not in Spanish. And so it's very challenging for them. So my team is working with a couple of our Latino Chamber of Commerce's and not-for-profit organizations to partner to see if we can sort of help make a difference in that area as well, because we're all quarantined, right? So nobody can talk to any, face to face. And so helping them understand documents and helping them get things to the right place and that kind of thing has really been a challenge for them.
Mm-hmm. One of the other things I wanted to just put out there, and I remember thinking this one of the very first days of quarantine was, what if one of the outcomes of COVID-19 would be that we would have public Wi-Fi and, everyone would have access to the services that, so many people don't have access to, so that, we don't have families and young children who are dependent on the only type of internet connection is available at the library. So, I don't know what that looks like in some of your other communities, but I would be interested to hear if anybody has had any, seen an impact and made any progress with that.
Julie, one of the things that we just did once we realized the impact of having a library closed is that we just started a fundraiser campaign where we were able to purchase a significant number of iPads to be rented out of the library. Once we open back up again, should this happen again, you could then rent, just like a book, you could rent a piece of technology. And the one other thing we did is that we enhanced our Wi-Fi services to include the parking lot of our library. So anybody that might have technology at home, but maybe not a great Wi-Fi connection, can come over and use our parking lot at the library to access our internet for whatever it's worth. It gives another opportunity that wasn't there before this whole thing started.
Right. It's a start, right?
She may know, I know that in one of the things that we did in Chicago, AT&T and Verizon really stepped up in providing Wi-Fi in neighborhoods of need. Those people who didn't have it could get it. And I think there was a very minimal payment, if any. And they did that in partnership with CPS, right? Chicago Public Schools, because the kids needed to learn from home. And so there was an effort there was, the kids got laptops and there was the Wi-Fi appeared, I guess, in areas where, Valerie, am I right? It pretty much, you're on mute, take yourself off mute. But yeah, so they have done some things around improving access to Wi-Fi for families who did not have it before.
It's amazing what gets done when when there's a crisis, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I had a follow-up question or comment in regard to this. Does Illinois have the same kind of municipal system that Pennsylvania has? And the reason I ask that in regard to this question is a lot is going to depend. For us in Harrisburg, we're classified as a third-class city. So in Pennsylvania, there's a first-class city, which is Philadelphia. There's second class, that's Scranton and Pittsburgh. I think Scranton's technically second class A. And then the bulk of the cities are what's called third class. And that city code determines what you're allowed to do and what you're permitted to do as a municipality. So sometimes we may not even have the authority to even look at something like public Wi-Fi because it's not in the third class city code. So I don't know if Illinois has a similar kind of municipal structure.
I'm gonna ask Valerie. All I know is Chicago.
That's like that's what somebody in Philadelphia would say.
Oh my God! If we had those distinctions in Illinois, I can't even imagine us being
Exactly. Trying to get something done.
Oh my God!
Our world, yeah.
we have our challenges with downstate. Let me tell you, they certainly they think Chicago gets everything, but I can't imagine us being called first class. And
Oh, that's funny. I know I'm supposed to be taking notes, but the question came up as to whether or not we have that system in the state of Illinois. We have what you call home rule. We have home rule states and home rule municipalities, and Chicago is one of them. And we have a little bit more autonomy than most.
Okay.
So that's the closest thing I can think of. But as far as the 3 tiers, there may be something informal. And then in reality, it's right, it's Chicago and everybody else, right?
Paying for this.
Hey, Dave, to get back to your internet example, we here in Lansdale just completed our own fiber optic loop.
Okay.
So we are looking to provide internet service to all of our residents. So instead of paying a bill to Verizon or Comcast, you would pay a bill to Lansdale Internet or Joe's Internet or whatever it is. Now, you can imagine our biggest challenge is from Verizon and Comcast.
Mm-hmm.
And we are working through the system, but we feel that we have much better control of the process when we provide the internet service. Now, we're not going into the weeds where we hire technicians to go out to your house and deal with the connections, but we're just going to provide the net. We'll provide the loop for you guys to tack into, to loop into. So, but we're checking into it because we think that that's an appropriate service that we can provide for our residents, just like water. We provide our electricity. We're one of 35 city or communities in Pennsylvania where we provide our own electricity to our residents. We don't generate the electricity. We purchase it and then we distribute it to our residents.
That's great. Are you is Lansdale is that a township, borough, or?
It's a borough. It's a borough, but it's also one of the largest in Pennsylvania. We have about 16,500 residents, and we're 3 square miles.
Yeah, not to add any more confusion to the folks from Illinois, but there's townships and boroughs in the Pennsylvania Municipal Code, so it's interesting.
Very
Sometimes
interesting.
we can't get out of our own way.
I'd like to shift the conversation. You can stay on this mode, but thinking about sort of the ideal with this is this wonderful portal. And there's another piece to this that Bernita and I talked about, and I also think Charlie would speak to, and I hope Julie can do this as well. But it's actually the bridge. It says, okay, we have this need over here. First of all, we got to figure out what those needs are. So there's that piece. Trying to address what it is actually that the people in your local community, need. And then there's the bridge to get to the resources which are on that portal, So there's what is that bridge? What is the conduit? How do you connect people, from where the need is to they're not maybe getting there on their own. What are we doing at the local level that we think is a way to get at that void?
So I would say that we're very fortunate that we have a large number of not-for-profit organizations in the city that really touch and work with these small businesses. Mm-hmm. The connection to those organizations and the city who pays them to do this work and World Business Chicago sort of brings it together like this. So those organizations are well aware of what the businesses need and what services they need. I think from my viewpoint right now, as I look at the landscape today, I'm concerned about capacity. I'm concerned about the capacity of these organizations to do the work that they need to do. I'm also concerned about the businesses who 9 times out of 10 are going to have to pivot somehow. They are not coming back the way they were. And so what can we be doing? And that's why I challenge my team to think about what can we be doing? What tools do we need to help get out there, helps businesses think about the pivot? Because if you made widgets, that's all you really knew, that's all you really cared about. So now how can I help you understand that that widget can now become a, I don't know, whatever. So whatever it is, the market, whatever it is that the market is now calling for, how can I move you to there? And so my concern right now is not so much the connectivity, because we've got that, but it's now this piece, the brain.
Thank you.
How will we help people visualize? Because business owners are not really good at closing their eyes and visualizing something. It has to be like this, right? We spend a lot of time with our business owners on storefronts, right? On, you need to improve your storefront. They don't get it. But when you show it to them, they're like, oh, I get it. I can do it. So it's the same thing with this thing. How do we get them to be in the frame of mind? And then once, and then how do we provide the resources and the support that they need to do that? We think for sure e-commerce, if I don't do anything else in the next few years, I've got to move businesses to e-commerce, because that is just, those that don't make that move are not gonna survive. So those are just kind of my rambling thoughts. I'm sorry.
No, those are all good thoughts. I mean, go ahead, John.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to piggyback off what she was, what Bernita was saying. It's the mindset now has to change, just because we're not going to go back to regular activities. We're not going to go to restaurants and movies for a while until people feel comfortable even shaking hands. And that's just, you know, somebody normally. And I've been doing elbow bumps now with people. I don't, you know, before you walk up to them, you may give them a hug, you may shake their hand, but it's just in the time that we live in. So we have to talk to the business owners, like she said, to make them pivot what they're doing currently, and or what am I doing currently now that could potentially be of assistance to this current pandemic that's going on. So if it's cleaning services, you know, offering environmentally clean, you know, doing it daily from a monthly service, maybe you're going back to daily. You know, things are going to be mobile now. So are you willing to get in your car and travel to go somewhere? I mean, do you have the capability to do, if you're a contractor, the capability to have a virtual free estimate for somebody? So if they have a camera, they can walk around and show you the things that they need to repair or need to get fixed, and you're able to provide an estimate and get them a quote immediately. So it's now's the time to kind of change all of that, your business plan, just the general overall thought process of how your operations are supposed to happen.
Yeah, and one of the things to follow up on both of those comments, whether you pivot or whether you start to think of doing business differently, if I don't start thinking along with you on how these things are going to change, then for potentially us, it becomes a very confrontational conversation, because the municipality traditionally has always been the one with the rules, the regulations, and the you have to do it this way because the code says this or whatever. And if I don't change my mindset to become adaptive and flexible and be able to understand that many of these businesses have either lost their life savings or have to reinvest life savings, I need to be sympathetic to that. And that's why I would always encourage staff to be part of a conversation so that we can understand what the process is that mom and pop homeowner are going through. They just invested their life savings in this. And I can't be the one that comes in at the last minute and says, oh, by the way, you need to invest another $3,000 in this.
Yeah.
There is no $3,000 to invest. It's not there. And to hold that up because of that is short-sighted on my part. And that's why I said earlier, sometimes we can't get out of our own way, because we don't understand that piece. Whether it's providing 4 parking spaces on each side of our main street for 10-minute pickup only for the restaurants, instead of having every single parking space designated by a meter. So we are changing our downtown model to provide curbside pickup spaces so that it becomes easier for customers and business owners to direct traffic to their business. So we need to change municipality mindset also.
Yeah, I think that I think that one of the things that we are fortunate again is that we work so closely with the city,
Yep.
and then bringing, as you said, those neighborhood organizations together. So just yesterday, the governor is prepared to relax restaurants to outside dining. I think next Friday. Not sure yet whether the mayor, because we're what did you call us? We're whatever. so
First class city.
Fifth class city.
First class city.
so the governor has said that. And if Chicago follows, if the mayor signs on to that, there will be some changes. Because you have to have all kinds of, permits for outdoor dining, right? Our restaurants don't have that. So I'm imagining that a lot of things are going to be relaxed and going to be waived, so that we can get things going, to get things back on track without having a lot of fees and applications and all of those kinds of things that we had in the past.
And that's when I imagine people are going to be, that kind of situation is,
Right.
And Julie and John, and Dave, people are going to be coming in the front door saying, where do I get fill in the blank? Like at the logo level, I feel like we got to be prepared. And this goes to my point, and I also talked to Bernita about the sort of the mentoring or finding out people in the community, maybe that have language skills that are needed, maybe that have, whatever it's going to take to get back up, to understand exactly what you got to do to open back up, who's got that information and who's willing to give some time to the local businesses or organizations. Like that's that identifying partners piece. Julie, would you say does that ring true for
Sure.
Sure.
Everyone started sharing a little bit about like the units of government here in Pennsylvania. We have over almost 2,500 units of government and 67 counties. And then I think we have 500 school districts. Yeah. And so, imagine now as we are, we've got the green light, yellow light, red light system, and we have counties that are going against the governor. We have, areas that are trying to do their own thing and be autonomous. And it's incredibly confusing for businesses of, which guidelines do they follow? And so the clear communication and clear, consistent communication is so important for our business owners, for our local governments, and then for customers and consumers. It's still very confusing what they're permitted to do. So that's an important piece. I do want to just build off of something that Bernita had mentioned about the e-commerce piece. What we find is that so many businesses either don't have, they're resistant to it, or they have been in the past. They don't have the financial means to be able to take that next step, or they just don't have they don't know how to do it. So I think there is a responsibility there from some of our either local governments or nonprofits to be able to help incentivize it and to encourage them to move into this, because we aren't just talking about recovery, right? We're talking about resiliency and what is going to happen. Where are they going to be if we're looking at the same sort of thing a couple months down the road, or 6 months down the road? Are they going to be even in a worse place? So the more that we can do for them, and there have been some fantastic for-profit companies. They're called either two that we work with is one is actually from Pittsburgh. They're called Snap Retail, and then the other one is called Locable, and they're there now providing free resources for businesses to try to get them into some component of either an e-marketing, e-communication, e-commerce. I also think that we as residents have a responsibility to support our local community and our local economy. And so what that looks like from a residential perspective, what it looks like from business to business, because so many of our businesses don't support one another. They don't look to each other for, you know, the services and the products that they each need. So I think any way that we can encourage that and promote that, again, I hope that that's an outcome of all of this, is that we become a much more stable local economy in any of our communities. And I think that there's also opportunity there for local financing. There's another company out of Pittsburgh. I just have to give them a shout out. They're called Honeycomb Credit or Honeycomb Financial. And it's a platform to do really crowdfunding at a local level where residents and customers can, they basically invest in their business, their favorite coffee shop, their favorite bakery, whatever it might be, their favorite food truck. And the money is then distributed as a loan. So once it's being paid back, those investors actually get dividends. And so, that's something where you can really put your money where your community is and invest. And it's not just, this kind of, distant thought, but that, you're actually directly helping one of your local businesses either succeed or, survive, and in some cases maybe thrive as well.
It sounds very similar to one that we have here, and I think they're national. Kiva, is Kiva national? National? Yeah.
Yeah. International. Yeah.
So that's, yeah. I wanted the e-commerce thing. I have a proposal that I'm hitting the streets with right now, looking for funding to hit close to it. I'd love to hit like a couple thousand businesses with a platform for e-commerce training, right? Because it's more than just a website, right? I think when people think of selling, they think, oh, I'll put this on the website and but there's so much more to it. It's so much more to it. And so if we can get, as you said, the information and the technical assistance to businesses to move in that direction. I was just saying to Nancy the other day, yesterday, we were talking about resistance versus, and I said, I'm not really seeing resistance. I'm just seeing, what should I do? What can I do next? I think if we give them a platform or if we give them a roadmap, they will follow it along with some help, but they just don't know what to do and where to go.
Mm-hmm. Dave, I wanted to give you a chance to chime in here because I know you've talked too about sort of getting that the help in place. You've got sort of the different communities, which no doubt, Chicago's the same, but even from the Harrisburg perspective, you've got sort of different communities within the city that aren't necessarily used to working or helping each other. And is that something that,
Yeah, so one of the Harrisburg population is about 50,000, and one of the best ways I've been told to describe Harrisburg is about 12 little micro urban villages, and I know it's from a Chicago perspective, Harrisburg is probably a neighborhood, but it's but it's really kind of a big town, and so what you'll find is there's 12 different little neighborhood associations, and I just they'd invite me to attend their meetings. I chair community and economic development. They want to have questions around small businesses, development, blight, those kinds of things. And attending these meetings, I found out pretty quickly, I kind of just assumed everybody knew everybody because the city's so small, especially in the active community groups. But I found out pretty quickly they weren't aware of each other because I would say, oh, well, I was just at this meeting last week with these folks. And they were like, who's that? And I would just be like, really? You don't? Okay. Because they're having similar issues or similar problems. And recently I had a situation where there was a good nonprofit that does a lot of trash pickup. There's a certain section of the city that really struggles with a lot of illegal dumping. And they've organized and they've done this sufficient trash pickup organization going. And in another area of the city, just a couple of street or blocks away, there was a really bad shooting, And one of their community leaders came to our city council meeting and said, you know, we're feeling a little bit ignored here. Can you come out? And I came out. And one of the things that the folks in the community were concerned about was trash. And I said, well, are you coordinating with Tannen's the name of the other group? He has a ministry called White Heart Ministry that does this trash pickup in another neighborhood. And they had no idea. So I got the two together to discuss, and they started having a dialogue pretty quickly. And it was just fascinating to me because they were essentially neighbors, but they just never met or knew each other existed. And they organized. Tannen said, well, I can help you pick up the trash. It's no problem for us to come over here and help your folks kind of learn our methods. And they got together and they formulated a day to pick up trash together, and they picked it up and cleaned the neighborhood, right? It was just some simple fix like that, but and that's sort of, I think, the key as we move forward. There has to be, I think, the local municipal folks or nonprofits, we have a lot of this information. We have big networks. We're connected to a lot of different people, and it's making sure we disseminate that information, but also be a little bit more proactive about the connection, making sure that we get people in the same room that should be talking to one another. And that kind of ties into the collective impact model, because I'm familiar with that because my day job is I work as a labor liaison for the Capital Region United Way. So I sent out on the message thread our link to our collective impact definition, and I apply that a lot to city council, and it's working pretty effectively with problem solving in the community and connecting different entities together that normally wouldn't have been talking, even a city the size of Harrisburg.
It's tremendous. I love this idea, you know, and again, that goes back to the role of host, a conductor at the local government level, which is something it's close to my heart in terms of what local government can really do to help as a partner in this. Do you all, it's 2:00. I'm thinking there may be some participants here that might like to come in on the conversation and ask you all some questions or offer their own insights. Does that sound, does anyone else, before I do that, have some thoughts that they perhaps weren't able to get in? I didn't follow tight to the questions, as you noticed. So there might be something you prepared that you want to share before we open this up. Are we okay? Okay. I'm going to just see as what do we have up here? I'm going to pick on someone here. If he's, Dennis, are you available? Are you there? He might be out of the room. Okay.
No, I'm here.
You there?
I'm here.
Why don't you come on video? You want to, if he does have this cellular issue. He works with small business development. What is ringing in your, I'm thinking you're probably in tune with the pivot conversation, the mindset pivot conversation. You run an incubator in Lewisburg. What do you hear in the conversation that gets your attention?
Well, a lot, actually. I was totally impressed on several comments. I'm gonna address two that I think resonate the most. One, internet. Obviously, living in rural America is a challenge.
Yeah.
And Julie, if you solve that with neighborhood internet for all, I will vote for you for governor. And Bernita, I love the source link, the Shy Biz. In fact, ironically, I love synchronicity. And as part of an economic development group, we have actually just proposed that for our local region. And I am going to be all over your site trying to figure out that and connecting with source links. So definitely a great resource. So thank you both for sharing those components. We've got a lot of small businesses hurting all over the world, not just in our communities. And I think anything we can do to provide empathy and compassion and recognizing that these are trying times for everyone will be best way to serve.
Yeah, thanks. That's great. And who else is in the participant in the audience today that might like to add to the conversation or bring a question forward?
Hey, Nancy,
Yeah.
if I could add just a couple things that the National Development Council, they have a Grow America Fund that's available for small businesses. So they just released that not too long ago. Verizon released a small business fund too yesterday. They've been having a couple rounds, so I think they're going to do another one here in another month or so. We have what's called the launch box here in Pennsylvania, and it's a good resource through Penn State. It allows like for free facilities for people to go in there, free webinars around business development, around licensing, intellectual property. Is just a number of different topics that are free for individuals right now. They've moved to webinars and offering them free as far as, just for registration. So what I'll do, I'll forward that information to you, Valerie, just so you have that and are able to provide those links to individuals. And I do have a couple other resources that I wrote down. I just can't put my hands on it right now. I was looking at a website, Alice, is Hello Alice. It sounded similar to some things that Ms. Johnson was talking about there, but it's like a resource hub of information. There's a community section on there where you can put out different ideas, different questions, and it's just a lot of information sharing on that website. Another site that I use quite frequently is Fiverr, Fiverr. They do a lot of services out there. There's a lot of freelance services. So even small businesses that are trying to gain more exposure, they can offer their services through that web portal, through that app. You can also pay for small things that you need, web hosting, logo creation, website design. There's people on there that read blueprints and will send a quality takeoff back to you for a certain amount of money. But those are just different resources that are available right now.
That'd be great if you could provide those. But I would just like to say to that, Charlie, the people that you work with and know, certainly many that I do, want to see that at the local level. Like, I think that resource is tremendous. But again, just in my experience, there's many smaller businesses or organizations, they want to know who that person is, like, where are they from? Who am I trusting it feels vulnerable. Everyone feels so vulnerable right now. So I think it is good to have, to the extent that we're able to identify in our own neighborhoods and communities, sort of who can be that bridge.
Yeah, and the launch box is through Penn State. So they have different, through each, I want to say Middletown is the closest one for us for Harrisburg, and that's about 10 or 15 minutes. But they're all set up throughout the state. And I know those, at least for Pennsylvania residents, those are something that you can access immediately, especially if you have internet access. You can get on the webinars today because they have several series of those going on right now. For me, at the state level, what we're doing as far as the funding aspect is through DCED, which is our community and economic development engine. So our funding, when we get that funding from the federal government, I believe the first set of funding that they sent out went through the community CDFIs. So releasing that, you had a potential of having a partnership with some other businesses, but a lot of those smaller businesses were left out of that particular pot. The city of Harrisburg has done a great job partnering with Impact Harrisburg to provide this $1 million fund. And I believe they're probably going to put some more funds into that. Dave can probably speak to that too as well. But just that you're giving individuals different avenues. I believe the application process wasn't too egregious in there as far as what they were asking for. They just needed some general information around your business to make sure that you were registered. And then that way you gain access to, some of those particular funds. And just trying to, I think right now is getting, like you said, we have to get a lot of this information together So it's housed in one area. You're not going around touching folks, passing virus, passing germs, passing anything. It's just information that is available. It's free for everybody, because the main thing is free. Because you can tell somebody there's a free home over there, but if they don't know how to use it or what to do with it, you know, it doesn't really matter. And I don't think people should charge for information, but there's a lot of folks out here that are trying to do that now. You know, just give the information out, and then hopefully that individual can utilize it.
Can I give, I want to give a shout out to University of Chicago, because you all mentioned some of the universities, and for many of us, universities are anchors in some of our LMI neighborhoods. So, you know, I fight with them a lot, but I have to give them a shout out because they provided close to $700,000 of grant money to small businesses on the South Side in their footprint
Nice.
in this crisis.
Okay.
So while you know we don't always agree on everything, I got to give credit where credit's due, because they stepped up big time to help those businesses on the South Side.
Nice.
Great.
If
Before
I
we
could
move on,
augment-
go ahead.
I'm just going to share, if I could augment that in reference to the universities. So one resource that we kind of haven't talked about, it's actually my own. I'm with Bucknell Small Business Development Center, and the SBDCs are national. So every one of you are represented by an SBDC. And I'm sure you've got relationships already with those. I can tell you this, we are funded in part by the Small Business Administration, and we are going to be receiving additional funding that will be spent in bringing in professionals to augment outreach. And if you're looking that you want to partner with an SBDC, now is the time to reach out to them. If you've got a service that you can provide, we are going to be looking for professionals to bring in. Our motto, our logo has always been helping businesses start, grow, and prosper. We are now adding helping businesses start, grow, and survive. And so we are looking at how do we restart? How do we help businesses navigate this new territory? And SPDCs are going to play a key role only because, not only, but primarily because it is a national program that is in every community right now.
It's nice. Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to build off of something that Charlie had said. I also, you know, there are some great helpers who are out there, but we've also seen that there's some scammers. And I just want to put that out there to warn folks to be really cautious. We've had some communities actually be taken advantage of and targeted with individuals who considered themselves SBA relief specialists, and that's what they called themselves. And thanks to Dennis and his colleagues, I reached out to our contacts throughout the SBDC in Pennsylvania, and they were able to clarify that they actually were misrepresenting themselves. And, you know, it was too late for some of our communities, but I would just want to mention that as a warning to businesses to just be careful and try, you know, if we can help vet them, you know, help be another source or another resource for the business owners and some of the nonprofits. I think that's another role that we can help play, because we have the networks. We can reach out and connect to those folks who can help either verify or question some of the scammers.
Yes. Wonderful. I think we brought together some really great resources today, which hopefully we'll be able to sort of compile and pull together. I think it's an exhausting time for a lot of us. Maybe some others are like me. There's a part of you that feels very energized by the challenge. And, you know, it's like, I just got to wrap my head around this, but I don't know if anyone else feels like you're kind of like I feel like you're out there, and I don't know, I want that, not like the Wild West, but, you know, out on a frontier. And I just wondered if anyone would like to share their thoughts of what it feels like to be sort of navigating at the front lines of where there really is not a clear path, and how do you sort of manage that and think about, you know, doing what you know, or finding out how to bring into reality a vision for helping. Anyone want to share just how they're feeling about this time?
It's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think somewhat impossible to try to stay on top of everything, whether it's mandates, whether it's you know, directions from the state, the different departments within the state, whether it's funding, whether it's technical assistance. So, I mean, I think allowing each other a certain amount of grace every day is needed. Patience. And, you know, Nancy, I think I'm kind of with you. I mean, there are moments where I do feel energized and I feel a deep sense of responsibility to be that resource and that conduit. And at the same time, it's exhausting too. Sometimes, you know, we're in week 10 and you feel like you're on a hamster wheel, yeah, and just not going anywhere. So, you know, I think that, you know, what we started the conversation with, that we need to think about the partners that we need to make, and that we can't be the expert in everything, but that, you know, having the network and having the connection so that we have the resources as well to find out some information or to bring the experts in where it's appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't have to be the expert in every situation, but we have these other roles that we can play in terms of bringing people together. And
Mm-hmm.
also just feeling a sense of, John's part of like a Friday call that I do, you know, for a client group and with local governments. And one of the things that I notice is the feeling by touching base every week, you actually feel like there's progress because you see, okay, we've moved on to another issue this week. And so you see that piece by piece, every, you know, bit of the way we are figuring things out.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, I was up here, and I have to admit the 3P process and who got grants really sucked a lot of air out of me, because I knew businesses who had applied. I knew that they were the right, you know, they had all their documents and everything together and just didn't get it. So I gotta admit, the week that 3P came out, I was just a little bit, you know, down. But we are such a someone said, I forget, I think it was Dave that was saying that you guys, some of the folks don't know each other. You'd be surprised that for a city as large as Chicago is, and Valerie will attest to that, those of us who are doing this work across the city, we all know each other. Mm-hmm. And it's a weird thing that we're in a city of 3 million people, but we all, I mean, so it's really, so having that makes all the difference in the world, because I can pick up the phone and I can call somebody and I can be uplifted. But I do see the promise. I think the leadership in our city is fantastic. I think that everybody who, we're all pulling together, but nobody's rowing on their own. Everybody's rowing in the same direction and rowing together. So that gives me a lot of hope. And so my team is awesome. I'll say that because some of them are on the phone now, they know it, but they are the ones that are every day pushing to make sure that these businesses can get back to doing business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Charlie and I, we talked about that, about the going for the loans and just the feeling that there was just not enough time to prepare people to go for those loans. And I think that was a low time for a lot of people.
Yeah, they changed the guidelines. They changed the, I mean, within what, 24, 48 hours, they changed a lot of the stuff that was on there. It was open for everybody, and then within 48 hours, it closed for a lot of people. So by the time we caught wind of it, and just small businesses, minority businesses, by the time they caught wind of it, the money was spoken for. So I think what it is to try to figure out what that mechanism moving forward is as we get money from the federal government, and how that's going to be, equitably dispersed. Because right now it's just not. I don't know a handful of people that, and I know several small business owners that have received the money or received any type of the funds, and we're talking a second, third, fourth rounds are approaching now, and some of these businesses out here, they're not living past 30 days. I mean, most folks don't live past a couple weeks worth of a check. So you're telling them to maintain for 60, 90 days without, paying anybody or doing any type of services. And it's hard out here. So
It's very hard.
Yep. So definitely, I think we're all in a great position, at least to provide information and resources to individuals and just kind of help them navigate. We won't be able to touch everybody, but I just think we take those, we take those individuals and we take those moments to reflect when somebody does actually get out of that situation that they're in.
Mhm.
I was going to add that a lot of what I think in all of our roles, we're all pretty plugged into our various communities, is that information sharing. But, sharing information is not necessarily the most exciting thing to do. You're forwarding emails, you're on conference calls, you're reading documents and forwarding along. So, and you don't necessarily see it, at least as like right directly, like you would giving like a box of food to a family, but I know that this information is really important to get out there, and it's helping people and it is saving lives, but you don't necessarily get that gratification of just direct service that you did before. So it's hard to know or feel that reward. So sometimes it can be a little frustrating to keep going and sharing the information, but the information is critical. So but sometimes, yeah, it can be a little discouraging not to see that immediate effect.
Yeah. I really want to encourage, if anyone else is listening in or would like to come on a video or just audio and say anything, we're just sort of in a closing mode. So any closing thoughts, and, if there's any other questions, you're welcome to share.
Hey, Nancy, as I'm sitting here looking at some of the notes that I took during and leading up to this, completely by coincidence, I'm coming up with like 4 general thoughts about all of this, at least on my notes, that all begin with the letter C, and so we started this whole process with a conversation about this situation. We also talked about communications being a key. We talked about consistency in message. And then we also talked about connections, and how all of these different parts of this big COVID, there's another as a 5th C, right? And I guess the 6th one would be corny. It is kind of corny to come up with like 5 C's, right? But I think that there is a message here, that all of these things are kind of wrapped up in these different pieces, and how are we going to look to try and make it through all this? So just an observation.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I know Valerie likes what's it called? Alliteration? Yeah. Valerie, do you have any thoughts you want to add to the?
Yeah, speaking of alliteration and the letter C, collaboration, capacity building are 2 other C's I would add. The things that really struck me, as I was listening, is, the thought about capacity building. Everyone agrees that we need to do capacity building, but we don't really put our money where our mouths are in terms of, the funding. The funding tends to go to capacity for people that we have pre-existing relationships with. And so you will constantly have groups that are constantly getting more information, and there's still groups that are being left out. And the question becomes, especially now where you've got everybody sheltering in place, how do you reach those people who have been out of the information loop, if not for technology, then just because, you know, their social capital is keeping them out of the loop. So that is a challenge, I think. And then to Bernita's point about e-commerce, is not just about training people on how to, you know, get an internet connection and sell. It's really, you know, you have to develop business models for e-commerce, and we might find ourselves tweaking the current business models that we have, you know, the things that we do in the physical space. How do we tweak those same business models so that they work on the internet? And it'll be even more challenging for those companies or those organizations that don't readily lend themselves to doing business on the internet, or at least they have never thought of themselves as that way. So that lends to another point of, you know, how do we pivot and take the skills that we have and become creative and still address similar issues, maybe in a different way. And it's not just a matter of computerizing what we do. It really is a brand new way of thinking. How do you think about it? I don't know. I don't have the answers, but that's what I'm hearing around the table. And let me just look at one. Let me look at my notes and make sure I hit everything. I just know that this has been very, very informative for me. You know, I've been taking copious notes. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate everybody's time.
Yeah.
So thank you guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it feels good to be within a group where you have everybody sort of contributing their thoughts and ideas. I feel in my own, you know, some of the weight lifted. And I think that's where that practice comes in, by practicing coming together, you know, even though Zoom's not ideal, but by coming together, it just feels like, okay, somebody else is also thinking about this, you know, and it's a nice reminder of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everybody on here is just, I know, has just a lot going on, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. And Valerie and I are going to use the material to carry it forward, and we'll keep you in the loop of everything we do. And if we use anything with you in it, we'll make sure you know that and make sure it's okay. But, you know, we want to cultivate what we started today.
That what they mean by the check is in the mail?
Yeah. You got that.
I got it.
Oh, well, you know, you came on here, you know, because of your love for community, and we're right there with you. So hopefully we're going to all be able to come out the other side with some new ideas and some inspiration for others. And that's what we all want. So it's just good. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to let you all go, and I will close it out, and we will be in touch. And the next session on next Thursday, Bernita, that's the one Christine is in, and that's on pivoting. So any of you that are really interested in that mindset piece, I hope you'll be back next Thursday for that one. And then there's another session to bring everything together, the call to action for, you know, the political action. And Valerie will be conducting that session, and I'm looking forward to that one as well, because we're all kind of wondering how can we make things happen at a more collective level. So important. Okay, thank you so much for coming, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much, Julie. It was so nice to see you. I know we've met before, but it was good. And Dave too. So I think the first time we've really been face to face. It was really nice.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure.
Thank you guys. I'm looking forward to being able to get to Philly to get a cheesesteak sandwiches.
Don't even start that
Thank you
debate.
so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. You never would know that everybody didn't know each other. Great chemistry.
Well, we do now.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you.
All right.
Okay.
Everybody be safe. Take care.
See ya.
Okay, bye-bye.
See ya.